I gave my stepmom what seemed like the perfect Mother's Day gift, then watched her expression twist when the truth landed. When my father, Mark, married Vanessa, I had just turned 11. It had been 13 months since we lost my mom, Laura. Too melanoma-aggressive, unstoppable, and cruel. One day she complained of a headache, and 82 days later, stood by her grave wearing a black dress. Hadn't even taken the tags off. Mark waited exactly a year before introducing Vanessa. She worked in the same investment firm client. Relations, always glowing, always controlled. Her hair didn't shift in the wind, and she wore heels to neighborhood cookouts. She makes me feel alive again, Mark said, soft but unyielding. I need you to give her a chance, Rachel. So, I did. I helped her settle in, carrying designer shoeboxes into the closet that once held Mom's muddy garden boots. I kept quiet when she rearranged the furniture and swapped our photos for minimalist art. I even smiled when she bulldozed Mom's vegetable patch to build a meditation deck because growing kale is for farmers. For 3 years, I wore the costume of a grateful stepdaughter. I went to her events in dresses she picked. I listened to her friends coo over how poised I was for 15. I kept my sorrow sealed beneath perfect grades and polite smiles. Mark didn't notice I'd stopped laughing. He was too busy planning getaways with Vanessa, juggling her clients and their shared wine club dinners. I clung to the last physical trace of my mother, her old sweater, tucked under my pillow until even that faded. Vanessa tried in her polished way. Flashy birthday gifts that were always more her than me. Fancy dinners where she introduced me as our daughter to people who forgot my name by dessert. College fund with her name all over it. But when I got my first period, school had the answers. When I woke up sobbing from nightmares, it was our dog who climbed into bed, not her. The breaking point came my sophomore year. I landed the lead in our school play, my first true passion since Mom's death. Opening night. Same date as Vanessa's high society fundraiser. You'll need to miss it, she said without glancing up from her phone. The Baxters are bringing their Yale-bound son. Important connections. Rachel? Mark opened his mouth but shut it when she rested her hand on his. It's just a school play, he said quietly. There'll be more. That night, I pulled out the old wooden box Mom gave me. Inside her wedding band, a curl of my baby, hair, and a journal I'd never dared to read until now. I sobbed as I read. Most of it was love memories, wishes, little bits of advice. But one entry dated 2 weeks before she passed flipped my world. If you're reading this, Rachel, there's something you need to know about the safe deposit box. The key is taped inside this cover. What's in there will change everything. I'm so sorry. The small silver key bore the name of the bank. The next morning, I skipped school and walked into First National. The manager's eyes widened. Your mother said you'd come someday, he said, and led me back. Inside the vault, a USB stick, thick folders, and a letter in Laura's familiar handwriting. My dearest Rachel, it began. By now, Vanessa is probably deeply woven into your life. But I've known about her for a long time. I read the whole thing twice, my hands trembling. Laura had discovered Mark's affair with Vanessa 6 months before her diagnosis. She hired a private investigator. There were reports, screenshots, text logs, evidence of the affair while she was taking me to piano lessons and folding laundry. The file was thorough. Hotels in multiple cities. Mark and Vanessa photographed entering together. Messages that made me feel sick. She's taking Rachel to visit her grandmother. Come over. I wish she'd just disappear. That one was from Mark 4 months before Laura got sick. There were credit card records, restaurants Laura never visited, jewelry she never wore, an apartment lease hidden in corporate filings, but worse. Financial theft. Documents showed that Mark and Vanessa had been shifting funds from my mom's family trust money meant for men to offshore accounts. It had been planned for years. Fake clients, shell companies, altered investments. Laura's family had built one of the top firms in the city. Mark had been a junior advisor. She mentored him, brought him in, okay? And he betrayed that trust, and then the medical files. Unexplained. Symptoms. Private lab tests. High levels of metals in Laura's hair samples poisoning. I started getting sick after our anniversary dinner, she wrote. It didn't make sense. The pattern only emerged later after meals Mark made for me. Toxicology results confirmed. 3 specialists raised suspicions, but no one could say it outright. I can't prove it, she wrote, and by now it's too late for me. But I couldn't leave you defenseless. The final page outlined her last move, a hidden trust in my name, the house, the company, the money. All legally mine. Mark just didn't know it yet. By the time I turned 18, everything changed. 2 weeks before she passed, Mom had updated her will working quietly with a set of attorneys Dad never even knew existed. I've ensured that what's truly yours stays that way, she wrote. The trustees will automatically reach out on your 18th birthday, but if you discover this letter earlier, use the contact details in the enclosed envelope. They're ready whenever you are. I spent hours alone in a private room at the bank, taking it all in. When I finally walked out, I wasn't the same person. The grief, the doubt that haunted me for years had sharpened become something solid, something deliberate. I didn't run, I didn't scream, I didn't tip them off. No, I did something far more terrifying. I became their perfect daughter for the next 2 years. I played the role to perfection. Top marks. Club memberships Vanessa recommended. I went to every corporate event with a smile, wore what they picked, said what they needed, and never ever let on that I knew. At night, I documented everything. Each time Mark mentioned a tricky investment or a stressed about a client over dinner, I traced every thread. I hunted down those companies, tracked the funds, mapped their fake accounts. I expanded on Mom's research. Kay built detailed spreadsheets, created my own mini command center right in my room. Behind my bookshelf, I installed a small safe hiddenware. I kept copies of every document. I recorded their conversations during dinners, and late-night business talks they assumed I wasn't paying attention to. I even snapped photos of files Mark left on his desk, trusting his teenage daughter wouldn't understand. 6 months after I read Mom's letter, I felt ready. Inside that envelope were 3 business cards, a financial crimes attorney, a forensic accountant, and a retired judge who had once been my grandfather's closest friend. We met at the judge's home one Saturday afternoon. Officially. I was supposed to be at debate practice. They had already heard everything over the phone, but seeing the proof in person hit differently. The accountant shut his eyes the moment he realized how deep the fraud ran. The lawyer muttered a curse, and the judge. He looked at me with deep sadness and steel in his voice. Your mother was one of the best people I've ever known, he said. What do you want to do, Rachel? I'd considered every possibility. I could have exposed. It all sent both Mark and Vanessa to prison. I could have disappeared and waited to claim what was mine legally at 18. I could have forced a confrontation, but instead, I picked the path Mom started calculated. Exact justice. I want to learn, I said. About the company, it's about law, finance, everything. I want to be ready when I take it all back. The judge didn't even blink. Your mother said you'd say that, he replied. She left us instructions in case you did. And so for the next 18 months, I lived a double life. At school, at home, I played the golden child. Vanessa had a new favorite story to brag about at her dinner parties, but 3 nights a week I met with my secret team. The forensic accountant taught me to dissect statements, detect hidden patterns, follow the money through complex webs of transactions. The lawyer guided me through corporate law, contracts, loopholes, everything I needed to legally reclaim control. The judge introduced me to contacts, bankers, regulators, thinkers, people who had respected my mother and were disgusted by how her legacy had been treated. Meanwhile, worked side by side with Mom's old legal team preparing evidence, safeguarding the trust, perfecting the plan. I graduated high school at 16, an entire year ahead of schedule. Mark and Vanessa couldn't have been prouder. Their brilliant girl off to Colombia early on a full ride. What they didn't know, I'd also been taking online business and finance courses, learning everything about Mark's company. Every hidden account, every fake investment. We're so proud of you. Mark told me at my tiny graduation dinner, just family and a few of their old friends. Oh, no one from school. No one who really knew me. You've surpassed all expectations, Vanessa added, arm around my shoulder as their photographer snapped pictures. Early admission. The board is thrilled about your future with the firm. I smiled and nodded, knowing that in under 2 years I'd control that board. The summer before college, Vanessa sat me down at a trendy restaurant over kale salads and sparkling water. I want to adopt you, she said, placing a hand gently on my cheek. You're my daughter in every way that matters. Let's make it official before you leave for school. I studied her closely. There was a flicker tightness around her eyes, a glance toward Mark before turning back to me. This wasn't about love. It was strategy. Illegal. Daughter meant she'd strengthen her claim to the business if something happened to Mark. I leaned in, wrapped my arms around her, and whispered, nothing would make me happier. Mark called for the check, already suggesting a celebratory trip. Let's take a weekend in the Hamptons, he said. I smiled. Let them celebrate. Their countdown had already started. We could invite the Beckhams, Vanessa suggested. Their son just got into Stanford Law. That sounds perfect, I replied, mentally flipping through the file I'd compiled on the Beckhams' failing tech startup and the unexplained funding it received last year from one of Mark's offshore holding accounts. That night I called an emergency meeting with my trustees. We met in the judge's book-filled study after I told Mark and Vanessa I was staying over at a friend's to celebrate my graduation. They want me to sign adoption papers, I told them. I need to no will that impact our plan. The lawyers spread out a stack of documents across the deep mahogany table. Actually, she said, this could work to our advantage. Legal adoption requires full financial disclosures. Will. Get a new, accurate picture of their assets. It doesn't affect your mother's trust. That's airtight. How close are we? I asked that the forensic accountant adjusted his frames. We've tracked 67% of the missing funds. They've passed through 4 different countries into accounts we've already identified. That's more than enough to proceed with criminal charges and the medical evidence, the judge asked softly. This part still made my stomach twist. The possibility that Mark hadn't just been unfaithful, that he may have poisoned my mom. The medical consultants we'd hired couldn't definitively claim murder. But the pattern was alarming enough to warrant further inquiry. Let's keep that separate for now, I decided. We focus on one war at a time. As I was preparing to leave, the judge handed me a small, carefully wrapped package. Your mother left this for you, he said. Specific instructions to be delivered when you were ready. Inside was a vintage Montclair pen that once belonged to my grandfather. She signed her first major acquisition with this, the judge told me. She said it belonged with you when you were ready to reclaim what's yours. From that night on, I carried that pen everywhere. A symbol, a promise. 2 weeks later, Mother's Day arrived. Vanessa always treated it like a red carpet event, lavish brunches. It's professional photos to show off her curated motherhood on social media. This year, she planned an elaborate garden party with 30 of their closest friends. The adoption announcement was going to be the centerpiece. I spent the entire week leading up to it, carefully crafting her gift, staying up late, organizing files, assembling evidence, and designing the perfect presentation. Ironically, it was the most thoughtful thing I'd ever created for her. The morning of the party arrived, clear and breeze, exactly the kind of weather Vanessa would have requested if she could. Caterers pulled in at 7 a.m., followed by florists, planners, and a crew of staff transforming our backyard into a high-end event space. It looked nothing like the wild, unruly garden my mother once loved. I found Vanessa in her dressing room, surrounded by dresses in soft neutrals. Which one? She asked, holding up to nearly identical cream gowns. Valentino or Chanel? The Chanel, I said. noting how she instantly discarded the Valentino I'd previously pointed out. "I have something special for you," added, offering her a sleek, silver-wrapped box. "Oh, you didn't need to," she exclaimed, surprise flickering, maybe even real. We both knew I'd never given her a Mother's Day gift before. "I wanted to," I said, "because of today's big announcement." She smiled, placing the box aside. "I'll open it during the party." "More dramatic that way." "I'd prefer you open it now," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "It's personal." She paused, clearly sensing something in my tone, then reached for the ribbon. Inside was a custom-bound book. On the cover, a daughter's gratitude embossed in gold. "Oh, Rachel," she breathed, clearly expecting a scrapbook, something sentimental. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The first page featured a photo of my mom, beaming, taken before the illness began. "What is this?" she asked, her voice already tight. "Keep going," I said, softly. "It gets better." Each page peeled away her carefully crafted image. Hotel receipts, banking transactions, medical records, all annotated in my own handwriting. I watched her expression, more of confusion melting into shock, then panic, and finally fear. By the time she reached the section detailing the diverted trust accounts, beads of sweat formed under her makeup. "This is ridiculous," she whispered, but her hands kept flipping through the pages. She couldn't stop. In the final section, an outline of the restructured trust, legal filings already in progress, and a scheduled meeting with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit the very next day. "Those offshore accounts you and Mark set up," I said casually, sitting on the edge of her vanity. "They're not quite as hidden as you thought. Did you know that 17 countries signed banking transparency treaties in the past few years? Or that wire transfers come with location metadata that matches your phone's GPS?" She went pale. "Mark and I will be very interested in the terms you're proposing," she managed to say as the doorbell rang. The first guests had arrived. "Much better than prison, right?" I replied. She stood abruptly, knocking over her mimosa glass. "You ungrateful little—" "Careful," I whispered. "Your guests are here, and I haven't decided if I'm showing them Chapter 3. She looked down at the open page. Text messages from the week Mom was hospitalized. Vanessa complaining to Mark about visiting hours interfering with their dinner reservations. "What do you want?" she asked through clenched teeth, straightening her dress. Her hands were still trembling. "You're going to walk downstairs and host your event," I told her evenly. "You'll smile, laugh, and act like the perfect hostess. Then tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. you and Dad will meet me at Judge Callahan's office to discuss what your future looks like outside a prison cell." Vanessa's eyes flicked around the room, searching for an escape route, but there wasn't one. "This is blackmail," she hissed. "No," I corrected calmly. "This is justice, with a hint of mercy. That is, if you earn it." I stepped toward the doorway. "You've got 30 seconds to fix your mascara. Your guests are already here." The next 3 hours felt like years. Vanessa somehow kept her poised hands trembling, smile frozen and brittle. I played the part of the loving daughter flawlessly, raising a glass to her guidance. Watching her flinch every time I laced my speech with veiled truths only the two of us recognized. "Lena has been such a light in my life," Vanessa told Mrs. Callahan, the judge's wife. "I couldn't love her more if she were my own. And Vanessa's taught me so much," I added, holding her gaze, "about loyalty and about consequences." Mrs. Callahan gave us both a lingering look. She sensed something but couldn't quite name it. "Well, it's clear you two are wonderful for each other." Right then, Dad texted. "Running late, golf ran over. It's just as well." His own little surprise was waiting for him upstairs in his office, an identical book, but this one filled with documents outlining his direct role in the fraud. As the sun began to set, the guests trickled out, showering Vanessa with compliments on the lovely afternoon and me with congratulations for my Yale admission. I stood beside her at the door, hugging women who smelled like wealth and nerves. Shaking hands with men who once sat at my grandfather's table but didn't even recall my name. "Is everything okay with Vanessa?" one of Dad's partners murmured to me. "She seems tense." "She's emotional," I replied smoothly. "The adoption announcement, it's a big day for her." Once the last car pulled away, Vanessa vanished upstairs. I found her 20 minutes later, hastily stuffing clothing and jewelry into a suitcase, going somewhere. I asked, leaning against the doorframe. She spun around, a clutch of tangled necklaces in one hand. "You can't prove any of this. It's all circumstantial." "The FBI disagrees," I said casually. "So does the SEC. But by all means run. They've been watching. There's an agent down the street. It's been for 3 days. Was Alino official agencies had been involved. Yet it was my final bargaining chip. But Vanessa didn't know that. She slumped onto the bed, the half-packed suitcase gaping beside her. What now? "Now we wait for Mark," I said. Then we talked terms. Dad got home an hour later, calling Vanessa's name as he walked in. I met him in the hallway, his gift in hand. "How's the party?" he asked, loosening his tie. "Where's Vanessa?" "She's upstairs," I said, holding out the book. "But I think you should look through this first." His face twisted, with confusion, then something darker as he turned the pages. Unlike Vanessa, he didn't say a word, just silently absorbed everything. Lawyer instincts kicking in even while his world imploded. When he finally looked up, his expression was flat. "Where did you get this?" "Mom left it for me," I answered with a set of instructions. There was a flicker of regret, maybe? Quickly buried. "Lean, whatever you think you know is documented." In triplicate, I cut in. "And it's stored in several very secure locations, including files about Mom's sudden decline, suggesting this wasn't just financial." His face paled. "You think I poisoned her?" "I don't know," I replied. "The evidence isn't conclusive, but strong enough to open an investigation if I choose to go down that path." He closed the book carefully, like it might blow up in his hands. "What do you want?" "The same deal I gave your wife," I said. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Judge Callahan's office. That's where we talk about how you both avoid orange jumpsuits." Later that night, after the house was quiet again, found Vanessa sitting alone in the garden that used to be Mom's. The once vibrant wildflowers had been ripped out, replaced with sterile, white designer furniture. "Why now?" she asked. Without turning, "Why wait this long?" I lowered myself beside her, brushing my dress smooth. "Mom taught me patience," I answered. "And I needed to understand everything first." "What do you want?" I'd replayed that moment in my head for 2 years, imagining triumph, vengeance, relief, but staring at the woman who had helped destroy my mother. All I felt was a cold emptiness. Dad signs over the company to meet through the trust, the way it was meant to be. "You both resign, publicly. You can stay on as consultants under my watch. The money you stole goes back into the trust. In return, I don't press charges." She gave a bitter laugh. "You're 16. You can't run a business. I'll be 17 next month. And I have a team. Mom's team. They've been preparing me for this for years." I heard footsteps behind us. Dad approaching slowly from the patio. "He'll never agree," Vanessa said, gripping the chair's armrests. "He already has," I replied, adjusting the necklace Mom had left me. "Check your phone." While we sat there, he'd opened his copy of my little Mother's Day surprise. His text to her had just 3 words. "She knows everything." Mark finally stepped into the garden, looking years older under the fading light. "You didn't have to do it this way," he said quietly. "You could have come to me." "Like Mom did?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "When she confronted you about the affair? Or the missing trust payments? How'd those conversations go?" He had no answer. "The company's not just numbers and charts." He tried again. "It's about relationships, reputation, trust. If you force us out already managed, I cut in. Mom's original board is ready to return. Most of them never believed in you. They stayed out of loyalty to her. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. You said they backed you. That they were loyal to you. He lied, I said flatly. Like he lied about the prenup. You signed the one with the infidelity clause. It's the one that leaves you nothing. She snapped her head toward him. What prenup? The one I have a copy of, I answered, along with the receipts from your affair with Ryan Donahue from legal. Those hotel charges, not exactly subtle. Her face drained of color. Dad looked stunned, then furious. Realization finally settling in. You told me that ended. It has, she snapped, but her gaze darted away. Lena's manipulating you. No, I said, standing. Manipulation. That's your department. I prefer clarity. I walked toward the house. 9 o'clock. Don't be late. And don't even think about disappearing. I glanced back once. They're already watching the house. And I left them both sitting in silence. Their hushed arguments echoed behind me as I stepped back into the house. In my room, I immediately called Judge Callahan to reconfirm our meeting. Then, I emailed the full dossier to my legal team, attaching a clear instruction if I didn't check in by noon the next day. They were to forward everything to the authorities. Sleep barely touched me that night. I lay awake in bed, listening to their muffled fights drifting down the hallway, a sharp crash of something breaking. A door slammed with force. Around 3 a.m., I heard an engine start, and then fade into the distance. By sunrise, the entire house was quiet. I dressed with precision that morning, pulling on the conservative suit my mom had picked out for my first academic competition. I wore her pearl earrings, minimal makeup. Polished, composed, I looked older than I felt. When I walked into the kitchen, I found my father slumped over a cup of coffee at the island. He was still in yesterday's clothes, staring into the mug like it might hold an answer. Where's Vanessa? I asked, though I already had a good idea. Gone, he said flatly. Took the car, took her jewelry, left her phone behind, so no one could track her. I had anticipated that scenario. It's complicated logistics, but didn't affect the outcome. She's not the primary concern, I said. We move forward either way. He finally looked up at me. His eyes were bloodshot, hollow. You look just like Catherine, he said. When she had something to fight for, a comment hit. Deep equal parts, warmth and sorrow. We should go, I said softly. Judge Callahan doesn't tolerate lateness. The meeting was short but thorough. Dad, stripped of the confidence that once defined him, signed every single paper placed before him: transfer of power of attorney, resignation from the board, relinquishing voting rights. Judge Callahan walked him through each clause, his voice professional but eyes cold. You understand, the judge said, that these terms are contingent upon your full cooperation with the financial recovery team. Any attempt to conceal assets, delay compliance, or obstruct proceedings will activate the criminal complaints we've already prepared. My father nodded slowly, and the public statement about this transition. The judge continued, we'll match the Script family succession and honoring Catherine's legacy. No deviation. Another nod. Initial here, sign there. Finally, the judge handed over one last document. This states you will not contact Lena directly until her 18th birthday. All communications must go through my office or the trustees. Dad's head snapped up. She's my daughter. You can't? You can sign it, I said quietly, or I release the medical files. His hands trembled as he picked up the pen, my mother's Mont Blanc, which I had brought specifically for this moment. He signed. And as he set the pen down, his posture collapsed, defeated, deflated, smaller. Can I at least explain? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. I've read your explanations, I replied evenly, in your emails to Vanessa. In your memos justifying the transfers? In the strategic review where you describe me as a symbolic successor with limited, practical authority. I think I understand everything just fine. Judge Callahan concluded the meeting. A car was already outside, ready to take Dad to a hotel. He would be allowed back at the house next week to collect his things under supervision. As he stood, he paused next to me. "Your mother would be proud," he murmured. I couldn't tell if it was praise or a warning. "I know," I said simply. 2 months later, I sat at the head of the conference table in what used to be his office. The company announced the transition as a family succession. Press releases celebrated the rise of the youngest female CEO in the firm's history. My father remained technically as a ceremonial figure, but legally he was shackled, every action scrutinized, every cent monitored. He kept his house, his title, his image. He avoided jail, but in exchange I received not only what was already mine, but full authority over every aspect of his professional existence. He now sat through quarterly performance reviews. With me, my executive team was made up of the very trustees Mom had trusted with her legacy. They guided me through each choice, handling the wreckage left behind by years of greed and manipulation. I deferred Yale by a year, choosing instead to immerse myself fully in the business hands-on, learning from the inside out. Vanessa reappeared. 3 weeks later, she'd surfaced in Miami, attempting to access one of the flagged offshore accounts. The FBI picked her up within hours. She spent 2 nights in jail before Dad's lawyers negotiated a deal, her release, in exchange for full cooperation. The terms of mercy had an expiration date, and so far, they were both barely clinging to it. She came back to Connecticut under strict conditions, assigned to a company-owned condo and given a minor role as a client liaison. Her authority slashed to almost nothing. The prenup I'd mentioned earlier turned out to be more accurate than I could have hoped. Dad filed for divorce on the grounds of infidelity and abandonment, leaving her with only what our carefully constructed separation agreement allowed. At first, she resisted threatening to go public about the company's past financial crimes. But my legal team reminded her if any investigation began, she'd be first in the CROSSHAIRS. It wasn't justice. Not really. Not for Mom. But it was the beginning of something Mom had desperately wanted for me. Ownership of my own life, protection of what she built, and consequences for those who had betrayed her. The search for clarity around Mom's illness continued quietly in the background. I hired independent specialists to retest preserved tissue samples. I had the hospital's archives reopened, items from her vanity analyzed, even tracked down nurses who remembered treating her. Still, the results were maddening. Suggestive, yes, but never conclusive. Patterns of exposure, but no single undeniable cause. Dad kept claiming innocence, especially in off-the-record meetings with his attorneys, where he admitted to every other crime. The cancer was real, he told them. I never tampered with her meds. I never touched her food. I wanted her to admit that, but not like that. Not by my hand. I didn't know what to believe. Part of me needed him to be guilty of everything. A villain with no shades of gray. A target I could take down without hesitation. But another part of me prayed he hadn't crossed that final line. That some small part of the man I used to admire still existed. Under new leadership, the company rebounded fast. We untangled Dad's web of shadow accounts, recouped much of the stolen money, and slowly rebuilt the trust of clients who'd been burned by his recklessness. I worked 16-hour days, often crashing on the office couch instead of going back to the house, which no longer felt like a home anyway. I sold it 6 months after taking over and moved into a quiet apartment downtown, just a few blocks from the firm. Dad moved into a modest place out in the suburbs. He lost his club memberships. His carefully curated social life vanished once the company's statement made it obvious he'd been pushed out last week. I visited Mom's grave for the first time since everything started. I did it, I whispered, placing a handful of wildflowers at the base of the stone. The company's safe. What you built is still standing. I just wish you were here to see it. As I turned to leave, I noticed someone else standing across the cemetery lawn. Vanessa, holding a small bouquet. She didn't come over, didn't say a word, but she gave me the faintest nod before walking away. Some lessons take years to land. Some gifts echo long after they're opened. Every Mother's Day since. I send Vanessa the same thing. A single photo of my mother, laughing, alive, surrounded by her flowers, along with a card that simply says, "Thinking of you today." She's never replied, but I know she understands it's the last conversation we'll ever have, and the only language we still speak.